Hello everybody, welcome to my video. So this week we are looking at arts-based research, and I thought this would be an excellent week to try something different out with the form of a video. So that's why I'm doing that this week, and if it works out nice and I like how this turned out, I might try it in future weeks because I like trying something new. So this week we were looking at three different authors. We were looking at Dr. Kendrick James and Sylvia Kind and Marissa McClure. And I'm going to focus a lot more on Dr. Kendrick James because I was really fascinated with his work, and he's also our guest speaker tomorrow, so I'd like to pay more attention to his work. So basically what I wanted to do, I've got all my sticky notes, of course, you know me, and I'm just going to go through a few of my ideas, do a little bit of a summary, and see if I can apply it a little bit to the classroom or to further research experience. So, first of all, I just wanted to say that I was really impressed with the work that Dr. Kendrick James was doing with his poetic inquiry. I think it's a really important first step to doing some of the main functions that poetic inquiry is supposed to do, and that being personal awakenings. And I think that's a really important thing with research. You want people to be impacted by the research that you're doing and to modify it in a poetic or artistic way is a really powerful source of expressing your thoughts and ideas. So I was really, really impressed with it. And there was a few moments where I was personally touched by it because I had similar experiences or I could see myself doing similar work. So what ideas about poetic... Oh, sorry, I live downtown, so if you hear some sirens and beeping and stuff going on, we just had that big convoy yesterday. I do apologize in advance. So the fact that poetic inquiry can mobilize facts, and extending past that, you can mobilize understanding, is something that I found quite profound about poetic inquiry. And I was also really impressed that there is kind of a worldwide initiative to get this work going, that being that there is an international symposium of poetic inquiry. I did not know that that had existed, so it's cool to hear that more people around the world are seeing this as an approach that is very valid and important and can be applied to different research settings and countries. So this story that Dr. Kendrick James had put out for us about the hummingbirds was something that was really impactful to me. I care a lot about the environment, about different animals, and land being disrupted. So through his use of poetry and the song that he had created, and the written component of what he was speaking to the readers and me, and it spoke to in the chapter, is that there is this embodied experience that you can't necessarily get just from reading words on paper. So when he started talking about the hummingbirds and he's living on this, it kind of seemed like a little bit of an acreage, or at least somewhere where there was a lot more trees around his house. He was just speaking about how lovely they were and how he co-interacted with them, and it reminded me a lot of growing up on my farm in Saskatchewan. And there was only a few weeks in the summertime when the hummingbirds actually do come that far north, so when I did see them, it was always just this magical experience. I'd be like, Mom, come and check this out, there's some hummingbirds. And, we'd sit and have our tea or even go outside, and hopefully they'd come closer to us. And sometimes we'd put out some sugar water. And it was always something that was really special because they have all these different skills, and they're quite a remarkable bird because they're the only ones that can fly backwards. I think everyone knows that they're a very special bird. Everyone likes hummingbirds. If you don't, then... So how he was talking about the initiative that the council in his neighborhood was taking part in, was that they were going to essentially destroy the habitat that these hummingbirds were living in, and also the homes that were lived in by these people. And it's enough to put it on paper and say, look, this was horrific for me. This really impacted me, but sometimes it doesn't transfer very well. So what I appreciate that Dr. Kendrick James did was he had used technology, art, poetry, and his research to combine everything that he had and somehow funnel it down into a song. So I want to refer to what Waterworth was saying in 1997. I'm going to read his quote here. He was saying that computers are not improving the quality of human thinking, but they act as sensual enhancers. And he goes on to say that computers cannot make us smarter than we otherwise would be. And I was thinking, okay, like this was written in 1997, right? And still stays true today. We have things like AI, artificial intelligence, that are attempting to kind of go past our own thinking and create next steps for us, but it's still human beings that are creating these programs and algorithms that are somehow enhancing our lives, right? And I think that his quote still stays true here, and it is still the human component applied with technology that is still coming forth in the end. So there was two main things that Dr. Kendrick James had done. He had used synthetic or synesthesia and transmeditation. He used transmediation, which is to translate content from one system to another. So an example is you are writing a story based on a photo, or you are creating a film or some sort of a movie trailer from a novel. So it is transferring one source of art or one form of information and putting it into something else. And the other thing was synesthesia, which is a sensory condition where specific inputs such as sound, letters, taste, or smell automatically trigger additional senses such as color, texture, or shape. So what he had done is he was using this algorithm on this website called GridHub, and he was turning his poems and his raw data into musical instruments using a digital interface code. So I was like, whoa, this is next level. This is pretty high tech, right? And through doing that, he had translated that and compiled it with the keys of a piano. And from it, it had made about an 11-minute song. And when I was listening to it, there were moments I was thinking, this is data. Like, this is not somebody thinking, this is a beautiful, poetic, musically, applying music theory to making a song. Like, this is data. And it still had moments where it sounded so whimsical and wonderful and actually did speak to or make me think of being on a farm and seeing some hummingbirds around. And this is something that is not universal for a lot of people. So to take writing, have people read that is one thing. To take a raw data set and apply it to an algorithm to make a song can give people a lot more of a full picture. And that's what we're talking about, that embodied experience. And I really appreciated it, and I was very blown away. Like, this is a very new thing, right? He goes on to say this quote here that I'm going to read in a minute that really related with me, but not all people have similar experiences to this. And when people had read this quote, they might be thinking, you know, is this guy off his rocker here? Like, what do you mean? So I'm going to read what he said. If you ever have the opportunity to talk with a hummingbird, you will find them more than willing to converse with you. And usually people think, okay, that's, you know, a bird brain. Like, birds just come and fly around and they don't really have a lot of thought process. But you would be very surprised with how the animal kingdom will respond to you if you have enough patience and you have some sort of a congenial nature to you. they will converse with you. And I wanted to just share a little bit of a story. Oh, sorry. And so basically, I had been working in Prince Albert National Park, which is a beautiful place in northern Saskatchewan where I was working in the tiny village of Waskasiu. And I worked there for many different summers, and what I like to do was go on runs through the different hiking trails. And on one day, I had been running and I was not about to slow down on my run, but I saw a tree that was broken down, and perched on the top of it was a raven. And I was thinking, whoa, that's a big raven, first of all, and is not flying off yet. Usually, they take off bird brain, like they don't want to be around humans. They're pretty clever, especially ravens. Raven didn't move. So I got a little closer and I was like, this is pretty cool. So, I snapped a little picture with my phone, and still it didn't move. So I thought, well, you know what? I'm going to do it. So I said, hello, my name is Dylan. I'm just going out for a run today. How are you? I sound like a crazy person to some people, but in this interaction, I was able to look this raven in the eyes and get so incredibly close to it. And I want to show you a photo of how close I got to this raven. This was not very zoomed in. This photo was me. After about 10 minutes, I sat on the ground having a conversation with this raven and just being really in touch with nature. Is a very profound experience, especially when it is responding to you in such a positive way. And that is exactly what Dr. Kendrick James had done when he was living on this acreage, or where he was living before. And it's not a universal experience. It's not a universal drive that people have in them to just sit down and talk with some hummingbirds or with some ravens. So what I appreciate about poetic inquiry and arts-based research is that it can help people who live in highly urban centers to understand what that experience is like through the written part, through the raw data, and then from the art or poetry that is produced from it. So that's my connection with that. I wanted to talk a little bit more about Sylvia Kind and her work with the cat's cradle and the yarn. I also had quite a similar experience when I was in grade 1. My teacher on Halloween, she had taken up this big art room, and she had these long strands of yarn, probably an entire ball, unraveled, and they were all over the room, stretching and going under chairs and over chairs and through windows and over windows and behind desks and in desks. And on the very end of it, you were given it as a student, and you had to find your way through the classroom all the way to the very end. And on the very end of it, there would be a sucker waiting for you. So it was this beautiful little Halloween treat that you got. And through it, you had to collaborate with other students to make sure that you weren't going to, hit them, because you're trying to get under this chair and they're trying to go over this chair. And it really brought me back to that moment. And it was so powerful going through that when I was a child. I'll never forget it, even though I was only 5 or 6 years old. And memories sometimes don't stick very well, but that one really did. And when I was a teacher candidate during my internship, I had done the exact same thing with my grade 3-4 students. I had taken up our entire science lab and stage, and I had it going upstairs and downstairs and up and down, the exact same situation. And my students had a very similar experience to me as I had, that these children at the Capilano University Children's Center had also experienced. Moving on from that, the methods and the intended outcomes of this were quite similar. There was, a lot of working with materials and getting your ideas taking shape and being elaborated on and developed during that time. And it's not easy to be in that moment and understand exactly what's going on. It's really hard for you to express that verbally during it, or even moments or a couple days after, it's something that it really sits with you. It was a moment where words could not describe it. It was something felt, it was something lived, it was kinesthetic, and that's what I really appreciated about Sylvia Kind's work here and her research. And it also had brought me back to that idea of attention and paying attention, because the collaboration and that mindfulness you had to have during the process of doing it is the exact same thing that I had experienced and that these children and the research team had also experienced. And I just thought it was a very interesting experiment, and it helped them to really make sense of how language and understanding works. And they had gone into speaking about her son and how his limitations and his exceptionalities had made it difficult for him to verbalize what was going on in his head at any given time, and then it also extends to the YouTube video that it was linked called In My Language. And because we are in a society where we really hold verbal communication in really high regard, it's kind of like the highest form of understanding or expressing your ideas is through verbal language, and it's not necessarily true for all people. Understanding can still be taking place, and people can be very intelligent in different ways. That's why I really like the multiple intelligence tests and ideas, because it can really speak to different ways that our brains work, and they're all completely valid. And that's what I really liked about Sylvia Kind's work. And I'm running a little bit extra on time here, so I'm going to move on from hers and go on to Melissa McCure's article. This one was quite interesting, that they had the children working with digital media like film and photography, and going out and doing different experiments with essentially just playing with these objects and documenting different things. So sometimes the artists were the children that were doing some sort of a play or doing some sort of monologue or some sort of improv activity with each other that was totally unscripted and totally unprompted from the teachers. And sometimes the artist was the one that was actually filming it and taking the videos and taking the photos. What I really appreciated about solidifying this work, that is, as they said, was quite a hallmark in where is it here? Yeah, showcasing the art as a hallmark, especially in Reggio Emilia's inspired practices. So the fact that they were able to actually see physical products of their work. So they had printed off the pictures, or they had some sort of the film demonstrated in different ways, like on a smartboard or screen or something. I assume that's how they looked at it. It was a good way to follow up with the work that they had been doing it, rather than just a spurious experience of just taking some snapshots. The children were actually able to analyze their work later on a bigger scale, and that can speak to additional understandings, because these children probably saw maybe on a little digital screen what the picture had looked like, but to see it later on after a couple days and synthesize that experience, and then with the final product, is really a important part of the learning process. And I really appreciated that they had done that in their work there. There's a lot more that I want to say. I was also really impressed with Dr. Kendrick James's article, because I had all these different words that I had no clue that he was talking about, like contrition, lemonscape, pathos, artifice, ekphrasis, lilt, and joysis. So I was really excited to learn new words. I like doing that. So I did have a few questions for Dr. Kendrick James, and I'm gonna just read them out. So, is there a lot of skepticism from other scholars when applying arts-based research or poetic inquiry, especially if you were trying to get this work published or recognized at a higher level? And the second question I have is, are there any circumstances where poetic inquiry or arts-based research may be insensitive or may be inappropriate? And in these circumstances, how could this be mediated, or what things could be tweaked to apply arts-based research in a way that is going to keep the community and everybody happy, but also have the important data results that you are looking for? So that is my little video for today. This was nice to sit down and just kind of have a chat with my computer. And yeah, I guess everyone have a lovely Sunday, okay? See ya.